I'm super happy to introduce our next speaker, Jimmy Kamadeka, founder at the SDR newsletter and Pitchfolio, to our virtual stage. Jimmy, thank you for joining us today. Please take it from here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Going to walk through a couple different things as it relates to cold email hacks that you can use to book more meetings. Now, there's a couple of different things to keep in mind here before we even get started that, what works now might not work a year from now. So these things are constantly changing. So it's important to stay up to date with what's working, what's not working, that type of stuff. So the things I'm going to talk about today are guides. What works for me also might not work for you, but I'm going to share a number of different examples that I've found success with, that other people have found success with. So there's a lot to come in this presentation. Another thing to keep in mind that you can take these examples and use them yourselves, but it's the underlying information that is really important. So if you don't know how to write a great email, you might not find the same success. So you have to understand the important aspects that go into creating an effective email for these things to work. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen here. Oh, hold on. Let's see here. All right. Can everybody see my screen here? I actually can't tell if it's working. Well, okay, somebody can let me know if it doesn't work. So I'm going to get started here. But like I said, so, this is a presentation about, cold email hacks to book more meetings. So in this presentation, I'm going to walk through a couple tips, a couple things to keep in mind when you're sending cold emails. So before we even get started, a couple things to keep in mind, just in terms of like the technical know-how. These types of things are very important when it comes to sending cold emails. So the first is that, don't send from your primary domain. So use some other domain. Make sure that you're not going to burn your primary domain and very much disrupt your business. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then in terms of volume, limit those daily email sending to about 40 emails per inbox. So many people right now are just sending so many emails from a single inbox. These spam filters are very, very sophisticated, and they're only getting smarter and they're only getting more effective. So 99% of the time, if you're getting very, very bad results, your emails might not be going to that primary inbox. So this is super important to keep in mind. Teams with that win the sales ops games, or teams that invest in sales ops, are going to be wildly more successful than teams that don't. So this is very, very important stuff. And then, warm up those inboxes, keep your bounce rate low. Again, very important. This is where high quality data does matter. So keep an eye on that. And then ultimately configure the technical settings on the back end. Very important. If you don't know how to do that, get somebody to help with it. It's very important. And then also just like little things like limiting the link tracking. That's going to help your deliverability. So make sure that you're doing everything possible to make sure that you end up in that primary inbox. So those are just some of the things. There's more to it, but we're going to move past this. Okay, so the most important part of writing an effective cold email is keeping it short. And this is so important. And so many people don't do it. So there's so much data out there from people like Lavender, SalesLoft, a number of other sales engagement platforms and other tools. They all say the same thing. Shorter emails are more effective. And so, ideally that the length that you want to be under is 50 words, but that's really, really hard. I'll share you a couple examples of emails that are under 50 words, but, ultimately I realize that's not going to be possible. So, shoot for that like 80 mark or below. But obviously, the numbers don't lie. The data doesn't lie. Shorter is better. So here's an example of what that might look like. This is for a tool called CallBlitz. Ultimately, it's a virtual sales floor for sales teams. It's a great tool if you want to go check it out. But this is a cold email that's 48 words. And as you can see, I have it being graded by Lavender right here. So also, if you don't use Lavender for your cold emails, definitely recommend that as well. But it's super simple here. So Hey, Bob, I see that your SDR team is remote. Would it be helpful if your reps didn't have to cold call alone? Callblitz created a virtual sales floor to solve this. Dial as a team, listen together, learn from each other, and book more meetings. So, super short email, but it covers all of the important parts. Um, First off, we're starting off with something that we notice about them. This is something that's going to be the hook. It's going to bring them in. So I saw that your SDR team is remote. That's not a canned email. That's something that we noticed. And we could even get more specific than this. And I think that would actually improve this email quite a bit. But I'm going to get to that in a second. So again, short emails, very effective. This is just one example of one. The next example is actually an example I sent. So I run a recruiting agency right now. And this is an actual email that I sent that got a positive response that resulted in a closed one deal and has brought in a significant amount of revenue from that repeat business as well. So this is very straightforward again, and it's going to be another short email. So it says, "Hey Rob, I saw your SDR job posting has been up for 12 days now and has 8 applicants." So that's a very specific first line. That's going to show them that this isn't a canned email. This is a email that is meant specifically for them. And then we can move on here. Like, need any help finding candidates in Houston? So again, this is a very specific email. This can't go out to everybody. This can only go out to specific people. We're in the age of AI right now. So sometimes, all you have to do is prove that you're not a bot to catch their attention. And this is an easy way to do it. So again, this email is 55 words. Like I said, this is a real email I sent. I got a positive response, booked the meeting, had the call, and won the deal. So that's just one example. So moving on, automate the right things, but not everything. So again, like I said before, we're kind of in the age of AI right now, which is incredible. Like, there are some amazing tools out there, but what we're finding is that it's almost becoming so easy to do cold outbound that people are just blasting everybody. So my inbox is full of this, where you can tell it's the fake personalization, the fake outbound. It's not an effective way to do it. So that's why I always say automate the right things, and things like research, the back end stuff that is setting yourself up for the outbound. And to go off of this a little bit, like, according to SalesLoft, 4 out of every 1,000 emails are customized. And according to Lavender, those customized emails get 1,200% more replies. So it's a massive difference if you're customizing these emails. And sure, it might not be the easiest approach, but it is the more effective approach. We're not going for volume, you're going for positive responses back. So that's why it's so important. And there's a couple of things you might be thinking, like, hey, this is going to take forever if I customize everything. And yeah, it probably will, but you don't have to make it that difficult. The way that I always structure this is by building sequences based on triggers and indicators, and then making those sequences very specific. So, there's a number of different ways that you can do that. They're going to be different for every company. But creating highly specific sequences is the path to creating high quality outbound that scales. So you might have like 10 different sequences with just slight adjustments, and then you can customize that first line of that email, and then you already have 2 points of differentiation at the sequence level, and then also in that email on the first line. So creating those sequences that are highly specific helps to scale that outbound. So it's very important to do that. And this is kind of going back to what I was saying before, is that it's so important to be as specific as possible. Nowadays the battle is proving that you're not a bot. You have to be catching their eye with something specific. And again, this doesn't have to take long. This can be just in your first line of the email. Like the example I gave before is, I saw your SDR job posting has been up for 12 days and has 8 applicants. That's specific. It's nothing out of the ordinary. A bot maybe could do that, but it's going to take a lot of custom fields, a lot of work to even set that up. And that didn't even take long to do, because all I had to do was look up, okay, like, how long has this been up for? How many applicants do you have? And then we can quickly scale that. So if I already have a specific sequence that's targeting SDR teams with more than 5 SDRs that are hiring in Texas, that's already pretty specific. And then if I add one more level of customization to that first line, we're already in a great place. And that doesn't take long. Like I said before, all I had to do was look up how long the job posting has been up and how many applicants there are. So that's really easy. And okay, moving on to another example here. So a bad example of this would be like your templated approach, where it says like, looks like your team is growing. Sure. I mean, it might be growing, but that looks like a bot sent that. So a better example of that would be like, looks like your team is growing with the additions of Bob and Lisa. Much harder to automate. So if I, as a hiring manager or somebody on the receiving end of that cold email, that's going to catch their attention. If you're name dropping somebody that's on their team, that's very important. So just being specific in examples already in itself is a huge differentiator. And you don't even have to have that many different points of differentiation in an email. But that first line is really going to be the hook that's going to get them to keep reading. And ultimately, that's the goal. So the second example here is, I saw your team is publishing ebooks. And then, a better example of that would be like, I saw your team published a white paper on cold emailing strategies. So that's, again, one simple way that you can customize the email from the start. It's not going to be something that takes a lot of research, but if you already have a bunch of people in a sequence that are publishing ebooks or white papers, something like that, all you have to do is just name drop one of them in it. That's going to stand out far more. And all you have to do with that is just go to their website, click one thing, and you've already got your answer there. So again, highly segmented sequences, add one level of customization on top of that, you already have a compelling email. So that's just one way that you can do this and do it at scale. Here's an example of that. So this is for Trellis. It's an AI cold call coach. Again, great tool. If you aren't familiar with them, go check them out. But the first line here, you're growing the SDR team at Acme. Saw you added Bob and Emily last month. Right there. You've already name dropped somebody that's on their team. So if I was a hiring manager and I saw this, you're talking about people on my team, I'm going to pay attention to that. And I will say this is very similar to an email I got when I used to be an SDR manager. I actually received an email like this and it really stuck with me and caught my attention. So now I use this in my own outreach when I'm talking to hiring managers and doing outbound myself. Like this type of stuff matters. So a super easy way to do it. And I'll share this deck with all these examples in it. So you guys have this. Again, I'm using Lavender to grade it. Another great tool if you haven't checked it out. But that's an easy example right here. And this is okay. So the next point here I think is so important and it drives me nuts because so many people don't do it. And it's so easy to do is just simplify the language that you're using. So often times newer sales reps and more inexperienced sales reps, they think they have to impress their prospects. And so what they do is they use so much corporate jargon. They use so many words that prospects don't use on a day-to-day basis. Your prospects are skimming your emails very quickly. They're getting bombarded. So if you're using all these long, complicated, jargony words, people are just going to skip right over it and miss it. So one of the most effective things that you can do is just simplify your language. It's not a complicated process. And this is one of the things that you can use, ChatGPT to help out with. And there's a number of different AI tools that can help with this. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to simplify your language. Emails written at a lower grade reading level have significantly higher responses than more complicated emails. So I always say, speak to communicate, not to impress. And if you stand by that throughout all of your messaging, you'll have far better results on your cold emails. And you can also take this into cold calls as well. When you are speaking with somebody on the phone, simplify the language. Just speak to communicate. And then, so this one's one might be a little bit controversial, but use images. So obviously, like this is going to hurt deliverability. So you have to be careful about how and when you choose to use this. But there's a significant amount of data that shows that humans process visuals much faster than text. So sometimes it's better to give a visualization of what you can do, like a before and after. And an effective way to do that is to create visualizations. I'm sure your marketing team has something like this. If they don't, you can make one yourself. But again, it can hurt deliverability, so use it strategically. Use it maybe with your higher priority prospects, people who have engaged with you before. Those are the type of people that I recommend doing this with, because it just has a much more, it has a far greater impact. So here's an example I actually found from Josh Braun. If you don't follow Josh Braun, he puts out tons of amazing content. So this is an example for phone ready leads. Ultimately, phone ready leads is going to help you increase your connection rate on cold calls. So the email is simple. It's, looks like your SDRs are cold calling director of benefits. What are you doing to increase your connect rate? 1,800 plus SDRs are having 8 to 12 conversations. Schedule 1 to 2 meetings for every 50 outbound dials. No new tech. They, so on. But as you can see, the visualization here is pretty powerful. You have, a significant amount of red dots on one side, and then you have a significant amount of green dots on the other side, indicating meetings. So this image is going to be processed far faster than, a series of emails. So something to keep in mind as well. Again, like I said, be strategic about how you use this, because this isn't something that you're going to want to blast out to every one of your prospects, because you're really going to hurt your deliverability then. But it's super important when it comes to how to process a message. So moving on. So use data from third parties. So if your company has significant amount of white papers, emails, case studies, that stuff it comes from a very biased source. So you are trying to sell something. Prospects know that. So one of the ways you can get a little bit more credibility is by using a third party. So for example, if I was selling a tool all about email deliverability, I might cite a source from like Mailshake or something like that, a different source that is providing the same information, and where we share a common goal. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, like as a seller, you are a biased source, and sometimes it's important to acknowledge that as well. So anytime you can have a third party validate that, very important, and that's only going to work in your favor. So that's something to keep in mind. And here are a couple of other just miscellaneous tips. And I think one of the top ones here is the most misunderstood one, where it's subject lines. It always comes down to subject lines, and people want to be selling in the subject lines. They want to be convincing in the subject line. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you do that, you're going to look like every single other company that's out there that's trying to sell you something. So one of the most effective way to do this is ultimately create boring subject lines. So for example, if I'm reaching out to SDR teams, maybe I just make my subject line cold calls, SDR teams, remote team, things like that, that are related to the overall email, but aren't trying to sell you anything. The people at Lavender call this internal camouflage, which is, I think, a great way to describe it. Because again, if I was an SDR manager and I see somebody talking about cold call connection rate, that type of stuff, I'm going to click on that email because it's related to my job. It's related to my team. These are things that I care about and I'm talking about every single day. So super important there. Avoid the persuasion in the subject lines. Avoid the selling in the subject lines. Just get them to open the email. That's all. That's the entirety of what it's about. The next one here is interest-based CTAs work really well. You don't always have to ask for time. Time is a finite resource. There's only so much time in a day. However, interest is not, whether somebody's interested or whether somebody's not interested. So that's why I always aim to spark a conversation. Ultimately, I'm just trying to get the reply back, because once you get one reply back, it's far easier to get another reply back, because that shows that you've piqued their interest in some sort of way. So these CTAs can be super short, like worth a chat, sound interesting, any interest here, like that type of stuff works to start conversations. And that ultimately is going to be your goal. So that's super important there. Another important part here is one value prop per email. Going back to the beginning of what I said, keep emails short. Like that is, if if you could take away one thing from that, it would be this: keep emails short. And part of that is including one value prop per email, which is just another way to help make sure that your emails aren't getting super long. You don't have to sell every single piece to every single part of your solution to everybody. Include one value prop per email. It's going to help create your emails or help keep your emails much shorter, and it's going to make them much clearer. So that is ultimately some of the hacks that I've come up with to book some more meetings. So if you guys have any questions, definitely add me on LinkedIn. I will try to respond to everybody that reaches out. It might take me a little bit. And sign up for the SDR newsletter. Every week we share very tactical, very actionable content. We love examples. We love sharing real life examples. As you can see in the number of examples I shared in this presentation. It's only once a week on Tuesdays. Be on the lookout for it. And let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm always happy to respond to everybody.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. We basically have one question from Johnny Hayek. A few people responded in chat, but I think we definitely need your opinion on that. What
Mhm.
is the best practice when prospects start ghosting you?
So I'm assuming this means as an SDR, I'm thinking from an SDR standpoint. So I'm assuming you mean like you've talked to somebody and they're like, "Yeah, I'm interested in meeting," and then they ghost you. Ultimately, it's going to have to be figuring out why. What happened? Did something change on their end? I love ultimately, the Chris Voss approach of just being like, "Have you given up on this project?" It might be a little bit overused now, so they might be getting hit up with that um, many times. But ultimately, don't hold on to those people too long. The best possible thing you can do is just have a healthy pipeline from the top and not have to rely on those types of people who are ghosting you. Um, if that's what you're referring to when it comes to an SDR standpoint, if you're talking from more of a closing role, there's going to be different approaches to that, but that's how I would approach that.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you so much. And another question from my side. I really like your point on personalization and how it
Mhm.
actually helps to um, improve the open and reply rates. What about AI personalization? What's your attitude to that? And basically, I encourage everyone who is watching us online to put your thoughts on AI personalization in chat because this is a kind of very hot topic in sales development right now. But different people have, well, of course, different opinions on whether it's really practical and really applicable to
Mhm.
the automated sales engagement process.
Yeah, I really struggle with this because there's so much value in AI, but at the moment, I struggle with it when it comes to using AI for outreach. Like I said before, I think it's great for automating a lot of the back end work to set yourself up for success. But when it comes to writing an effective email, I really think that that personal touch is very important with that. So I say automate the back end stuff, and then if you do it successfully, you're going to create a situation where you have to do way less work up front in the actual outreach process when you're writing emails. So it's getting there. I think at the moment though, we're not at a point where you can fully rely on AI. I think it's going to be wildly important to become a great writer, so you can determine if what the AI is giving you is even good. So ultimately, it's going to go back to those foundational skills.
Got it. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for doing this presentation today. It's full of insights, and everyone really enjoyed. Thank you so much.